Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Copy That panel. My name is Luca. I'm here on behalf of St. Michael's Print Shop. I am zooming in live from the Eastern Edge Gallery, where we are doing a live viewing party. I'm going to ask everybody to save your questions until the end. You can type them in the chat now, but they'll be answered all at the end. And people here in person, save your questions and I can ask them when everything else is wrapped. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Suzie now.
Just get my notes. All right. So, welcome everybody to the Copy That panel, Printmaking, Ritual and Connection, part of Inkfest 2024. Put on by St. Michael's Print Shop in St. John's, Newfoundland. And it's really too bad we can't all be there, but it's really great to have this talk happen across so many places and time zones. So hello to everyone in the viewing party in Eastern Edge in St. John's, and hello to the early morning people in Vancouver, and hopefully the late nighters in Hong Kong will be joining us soon. My name's Suzie Smith, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist who works with printmaking and installation based in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Treaty 1 territory, and I'm an assistant professor of print media at the University of Manitoba. In August, I was the visiting artist at St. Michael's Print Shop, which is kind of how I ended up here today. I'm going to start off with a land acknowledgement for St. John's, Newfoundland, where Inkfest is taking place. So, St. Michael's Print Shop recognizes that it resides and conducts activities on Ukta-Humguk and interacts within the unceded territories of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of the province. SMP commits to uplift the voices and follow the lead of Indigenous communities working towards decolonization and to do important anti-racist work in the shop and in our community. SMP commits to confront settler colonialism in an effort to decolonize its space and structure while prioritizing the safety of Indigenous people and artists. And personally, I'm in Winnipeg at the moment. I'm located in Treaty 1 territory, located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, Asinininu, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. So we have 3 artists speaking today, and I'll take this first little bit to introduce each of them and read their bios. And following that, we'll have lots of time for questions. I've got a bunch of questions. If the artists want to ask each other questions, there's also time for that. And then also feel free at any time to put questions into the chat, and then at the end, we'll kind of go back and read them all. Okay, so I'm going to just read the bios for everyone. I'll start off with Annie Canto. Annie Canto is a visual artist and educator living on the unceded homeland of the Hung-Kaminam and the Squamish speaking people in Burnaby, British Columbia. The underpinnings of her socially engaged art practice uses critical race theory and women of color feminist theories to question the complex systems that govern our relationships. Despite the theoretical framework lurking beneath the work, Canto comes at those weighty issues from the side with an irreverently serious playfulness. In her installation in print-based practices, Canto shepherds us towards the quiet moments, those slippery experiences of social rupture, and its flip side of kinship and belonging. Sorry, it's still early. I'm getting used to speaking here. All right, following that, we'll have Kaleena Stasiak, originally from Ontario, Canada. Kaleena Stasiak holds a BFA in printmaking from the Ontario College of Art and Design and an MFA in printmaking and book arts from the University of Georgia. She has taught printmaking workshops at St. Michael's Print Shop in St. John's, Newfoundland, where she was the May 2023 visiting artist. And at Aeromont School of Arts and Crafts, Stasiak has also completed residencies at Stoveworks in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the Klondike Institute of Art and Culture in Dawson City, Yukon Territory. In 2017, Stasiak founded the Southeast East Women Wrestlers, a performance troupe based in Athens, Georgia, that uses the spectacle of wrestling to reframe stereotypes and representations of femininity. Stasiak is currently serving the Department of Art and Art History at the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi, as area head and assistant professor in printmaking. And then finally, we'll have Snack Witch Joni Chung. Snack Witch Joni Chung is a grateful, uninvited guest, born and knows she wants to die on the unceded territories of the Coquitlam, Squamish, Stalo, Tsleil-Waututh people, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and are a certified sculpture witch with a BFA from Concordia University. She holds a MFA from Concordia. She holds a BFA with distinction in visual art from the School for the Contemporary Arts at Simon Fraser University. As a wicked #magic girl who eats art and makes snacks, she has exhibited and curated shows, often online across Turtle Island. Currently, they are based on the stolen lands of the Kanianan Kehaka people. They are a recipient of numerous awards, including the Individual Arts Grants, Visual Artists, British Columbia Arts Council, Research and Creation Grant, Canada Council for the Arts, and the Dale and Nick Tedeschi Studio Arts Fellowship. Aside from art making, Joni likes wandering down grocery store aisles and drinking bubble tea. Okay, so now I'm going to pass over the mic to Annie, and I'll just share the images.
Okay, while you're putting those up, everyone can hear me good, I'm hoping. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and to talk to you, Suzie, and between the artist practices that you just mentioned. Yeah, it's 7:30 over here in where I am in Burnaby, and the sun is coming up. Trying to caffeine myself up, get super pumped about my own art practice here, which I'll talk about for 15 minutes. All right, so I'm going to talk about just 3 projects, and I want to talk about the theme that we came up with as a group. I think the title, we just wanted to come up with a title that was kind of quirky and fun. Copy that. But then we had some conversations about how our work kind of overlaps, which we'll talk about later, with this ideas of how we use printmaking alongside the concepts or the practices of creating ritual for how we do things, and then also this like attention to using a art form to connect with other people. I guess you can go to the first slide of a project that I'll talk about. This is the most recent work that I have done. It's currently up at the Artists for Kids Gallery at Gordon Smith, at the Gordon Smith Foundation. And this is a picture of just one small section of it, but it was my first curatorial project, a collaboration with the Artists for Kids main curator, Amelia Epp. And what I have pictured here is like the culmination of spring semester of screen printing in classrooms with, I don't know how many, over 100 kids from the North Vancouver School District. I'm bringing this project into this talk first because it's a direct foray into printmaking, and usually I'm using printmaking and various other practices to create these kinds of transformation of space. Printstallations is what the phrase that we came up with in previous talks. And I wanted to show a couple close-ups of how the students kind of took on the project. So the concept was to create a like a student-friendly, a child-friendly space in this like huge gallery that is under awesome resource for the North Vancouver School District. It's actually a part of the school district, which is amazing. I've never seen a school district with so much access to the arts. But I wanted the kids to feel like part of the space, this like very big, huge wall, like white wall gallery. So what I did was I went into classrooms. I had them each design a bug. We did the process of screen printing with embroidery hoops. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. We put emulsion on embroidery hoops, put these like basic bug shapes of, you'll see the ant, the beetle, the butterfly and there's a worm. And then they would put in stickers to design their own specific thing, print them on fabric, and then add in context for what they're saying to each other. The idea that I was teaching them was like about how there's stories around us all the time. And if there's characters that we're never thinking about that are underneath our feet, who would they be? Literally bugs. So I'm just showing some of the hilarious things that they came up with on their own, kind of unprompted, just with the encouragement to talk to another classmate through their bug and avatars. Yeah, so I sewed these all into quilts in order to create a blanket for it, and we filled the space with zines. We sent a lesson plan out to classrooms, and teachers really took it on to make these zines that you'll see on the far wall. Yeah, and now every classroom in the North Vancouver School District is getting the opportunity to like tour this space. And this is just the mezzanine of this space. So there's a whole floor that I did not photograph of the like work curated by 20 other artists. Yeah, and I think one of the themes that I want to talk about in this work, and then the other projects that I'm talking about today, is this idea that we, as printmakers, I feel like we make these like really rigid ways of making because it's satisfying, because you know exactly how to get your tools to work properly and to get that like crisp print. And I keep, for some reason, maybe because I just love working with other people, I'm working with children, I'm working with community members, I bring these processes into these spaces and I just watch them completely fall apart. And you just have to kind of accept what happens. I think that the prints that I'm showing here, so wacky, so messy, so uncrisp, but that liveliness of community in connection in the process of like a printmaking ritual that I've come up with is something that I've learned to love. And now I think I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we're done with that project, I guess. And then I want to talk about this project because it was, I think, the first time I really got the opportunity to think about this complete transformation of a space. You saw a little bit of that in the creation of a blanket fort, but at the same time, that space still is being used as an art gallery. This is a project called My Beautiful Laundry, which took place at the Klondike Institute of Arts and Culture at the Odd Gallery in Dawson City, Yukon, where I lived for a little while teaching at the School of Visual Arts up there. And I fell in love with the city. If you've never been there, it's a very special place. Very small, like a town of 2,000 people in the winter months, and then it blasts up to 20,000 in the summer, with people working in different industries, with people just coming to work in film, like for various gold, like reality television, for people coming up to do seasonal Canada Parks work. So I was leaving town. I was there during the winter in the tiny population mode, and I really was sad to be leaving. I was leaving in the spring, and everyone was talking about how the spring is unbelievable, like the snow melts. It's called the big reveal because you get to see all the stuff that has been under the snow all season, namely dog shit. But anyway, I was leaving and I was really sad, and so I wrote this like my ode to Dawson by saying by writing this proposal to put a working laundromat in their art gallery as a transitionary kind of seasonal space for a lot of people, and for people who like want to live creatively. A lot of people live off grid. There is no public laundry service, and I kept hearing from various people, like, I think I kept asking like, hey, if you want to like live here, like what would you get into? And I think a lot of people made the joke like, oh yeah, free laundry. That's what we need, is laundry. So I don't know. I was thinking a lot about immigration story at the time. I don't know why. I guess I'm always thinking about it. I'm a second generation Filipino immigrant. And I'm always thinking about kind of the systems that allowed my family to get together and be where they are. And yeah, I was thinking about how that is attached to in-care service work. A lot of my family is in the medical field and in-house, in-house care. And of course, there's a long history of kind of Asian immigrants being put into these kinds of positions where a specific kind of work is allocated for that demographic, and one of which is this idea of the feminine work or women's work. So there's a lot of Asian-owned laundromats you'll see across BC where I live now. But anyway, I was thinking a lot about that, and I was like, okay, well, how do I bring something that the town actually needs to feel myself a sense of belonging, and also be able to like work for them because they've welcomed me into the community. Yeah, we made this gallery they let me do it. We made the gallery into a laundromat. I have a picture of these like washing machines that I got off Facebook Marketplace in BC, put them in a rental unit, drove 30 hours up to the Yukon, and gave them some personalities. And on the other side, we have another situation where I brought screen printing into the gallery for a workshop during the Klondike Riverside Arts Fest. And again, we had designed, me and my collaborator, Yasmina, who came in to do a lot of the community events. Yeah, we brought in these designs that we had made. We had people make prints, hang them up on the clotheslines in the space. And again, we saw, the ink drying on the screen, all these like micro kind of systems that broke down. So we had to come up with new ones. And but overall, that everyone who came in and pulled a print was part of the show, so which I really loved. Their prints hung alongside clean clothes that were taken out of laundry machines, which I love that aesthetic of, because what's two systems of doing that we do all the time, just alongside each other, systematic of cleaning your clothes and pulling a print. Love seeing those next to each other. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Let me know too, I'm not sure how long I've been talking. I'll just talk about these two slides quickly. I think, again, I want to touch on that idea that I had a issue kind of with the art gallery going through school, going through the different places, because I didn't see it as a place for like the wacky kind of connections that I wanted to have with people. I saw it as kind of stuffy. And at some point, long after I finished my master's degree, because I had to go through all those traumas, I guess, I realized that art gallery can be, depending on who's running it, just a place, a playhouse, like a place where you can imagine it to be anything you want. And what are the other spaces that you get to have like that as an adult? So yeah, I took that full swing in my beautiful laundry. This is a picture of the beginning hours of an air dry disco that we held in the space with there's karaoke machine in the back. We played like a 6-hour disco playlist curated by a friend of mine. And we danced around these drying clothes. And I just brought in a picture of the vinyl that I created, because honestly, it was my favorite part of the show. I really liked the idea of playing with an aesthetic that we see all the time on small businesses, family-owned businesses. And sometimes I did a lot of research, like looking around to see how all these different window displays are designed. And they're just chaotic. So you can see on the window design, we have all the things that we offer at the laundromat, including screen printing, idle time, disco time, and karaoke. So yeah, and I have one more extra slide that I want to just talk about briefly to talk about my connection with St. Michael's print shop, if that's okay. Oh, just kidding, it's not there. That's all. Okay, so that's how I'll wrap it up for today, and I think yeah, pass it on to Kaleena.
Excellent. Thanks, Annie. All right, on to Kaleena next. Oops.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Suzie and Annie. Really excited to be here. I am gonna start with a land acknowledgement for Oxford, Mississippi, since it wasn't in my bio. So the University of Mississippi inhabits the ancestral lands of the Chickasaw indigenous people. We are keenly aware that we study and work at a campus founded on colonized land that was originally constructed using the labor of enslaved people. All right. So I am an interdisciplinary artist working across printmaking, sculpture, textiles, and performance. And in my work, I explore the connection between historical and contemporary material culture as a way to understand the past and its continuing effect on the present. And I have always been inspired by quilts ever since undergrad and continuing to this day. My great-grandmother was an avid quilt maker. And so early on, I began to explore their shapes, colors, and patterns through different printmaking mediums. And as I did a bit more research, took some feminist theory classes, I discovered that functional items like quilts that were made for the home are considered women's work and are often born out of this impulse to create by groups who are largely excluded from the art world. And I became really fascinated by this persistence and desire to record stories and identities through domestic items that served a functional purpose in the home. And I was initially drawn to printmaking because it felt like I was learning a skill that I could pass on to students, which I felt like was similar to informal knowledge sharing that happens in craft practices. And I was also really fascinated by the heavy equipment, the intricate processes, and also the way that it turned the body into a machine. I found that the repetitive actions that are needed to make a quilt are similar to the repeated motions that are needed to make a print. And so I began reproducing these handmade objects like quilts and embroidery through the mechanical medium of printmaking. The hand was removed and the unique human-made marks perfectly replicated in their imperfections. And so my research into handmade domestic objects then led me to Victorian mourning rituals and craft. I was really interested in objects like hair wreaths that were made by women to decorate the home, but also honor the deceased. And I found that they were really beautiful, but also grotesque, since they were actually manipulating human hair into these floral arrangements. But that they were also at odds with my understanding of contemporary grief and mourning rituals. Death nowadays is often super sanitized, kept separate in hospitals. I looked it up the other day. Bereavement leave for most Americans is only 3 to 5 days, and then you're just expected to go back to work. And I just really was kind of interested in the Victorians kind of like the way that they would sort of like simmer and like stay in their grief for really long periods of time. And the images in this slide are actually from an exhibition that I had in 2013 at Open Studio in Toronto while I was a member there. The show was called Carry On, Carry On, like carry on the like dead animal flesh. And the focal point was this large light box bed with a quilt made of etchings on Japanese paper. I was really interested in the bed as a metaphor for the place where we're born, where we die, and also where we sleep and wake, which in a sense is a kind of birth and death. And this was the first time that I had made a sculpture, and also the first time that I had used the multiple to make a larger item like a quilt. So tiny etchings used to make this larger object. Next slide, please. Oop. So I first moved to the United States, to Athens, Georgia, to pursue my MFA in 2015. And as a way to understand this new place that I felt was very different from where I was coming from, I began to study it and make work about it. And so this research took me out of the studio and on trips to antebellum homes, living history museums, and Civil War reenactments. And I started investigating the stereotypical portrayals of the South, which were what I was familiar um, with the lived reality and experience of Southerners living in the South, and also the contemporary reproduction of historical narratives. And I began to notice that there is a culture of nostalgia that is promoted through tourism and historical presentations that continues to inform contemporary constructions of Southern identity. And an example of this, a recent example, is the school where I teach now, affectionately called Ole Miss. The football logo, they used to be called the Rebels, and Colonel Reb is their logo, but they've had two different name changes, but still they are constantly referred to as the Rebels. So this kind of like holding on to these antebellum like ideals and like this idea of the golden age of the South. I can see it like really predominant here, especially with the football culture. So I wanted to explore these ideas through sculptures. So I thought to myself, what is the most stereotypical Southern thing that I can think of as this newly transplanted Canadian? And the rocking chair came to mind because when I was moving here, I imagined myself on a front porch, sitting in a rocking chair, sipping sweet tea with like Spanish moss everywhere. And so I distilled this nostalgic icon to its most defining feature, the rocker, and I repeated and mirrored it around a central core. And this repetition and mirroring of the rockers was an exploration for me in the seduction and danger of repeating the past. A lot of this work that I was making was also just 1 year after Trump had been elected president. And so that slogan, "Make America Great Again," was just everywhere. And so when I reflect on the sculptures that I make, I do see connections to my education and experience as a printmaker. I always need to make iterations, and a lot of these sculptures have repeating elements. In some, I play with the surface as if it is a relief, and there's often this tension between flatness and three-dimensionality. And so while I was in grad school, I was continuing to research quilt culture, and I was really drawn to the communal aspect of the quilting bee, which was a time where women would get together to sew, discuss politics, and gossip. And I really wanted to incorporate this aspect of community building into my own practice, and also to make connections at the University of Georgia since I was at this new school and a new place. So I set up a quilting loom in my studio, and I invited people to come and sew a quilt with me. No skill or experience required. There was no set topic. Uh-oh. For dialogue,
Sorry
and
about
often
that.
discussed readings from class, or talked about grad school in general. The quilt did become a final product, but the real work was in the process, the sharing of skills and ideas, and also this bonding over a communal experience. And the community aspect of printmaking is really why I got into it in the first place. I was a drawing and painting major originally, and then I took a print class and saw the energy and constant interaction that took place in a shared studio space and was immediately hooked. And I think the inherent community of the print studio is probably why I started to really want to create work that also engages with the public and builds community. Next slide, please. So in 2017, I crafted an artist project that became a women's wrestling league in Athens, Georgia. And our mission statement is that we are a group of female identifying performers who call ourselves the Southeast Women Wrestlers. Through performance, we subvert gender stereotypes by portraying a plethora of definitions of femininity. And so in the beginning, I had never done anything like this before. So I started by recruiting wrestlers across departments at the University of Georgia and from the Athens community. There is a huge culture of wrestling in Georgia, and we engaged in it by attending some wrestling training at local wrestling venues. In the beginning, they didn't really know what to do with us. But gradually they came around as they saw that we were actually really sincere about learning their craft. And also, we wanted to wrestle and we didn't want to injure ourselves. And we crafted our characters and our costumes, which is always the best part. A lot of the character ideas actually came directly from the wrestlers' academic research. So for example, there was a character named Marie Fury, who was pursuing a master's in science. Joan of Snark was a PhD candidate in medieval studies, and Amazona Prime was studying cyborg feminism. And my character was a cougar named Mrs. Robinson. So I was interested in this archetype of women hitting their sexual peak later in life, when often sometimes society has deemed them past their prime. And being in grad school and putting on a large-scale collaborative project like this actually worked out really well because there were so many people around with different skill sets. So the printmakers were busy making t-shirts and posters and koozies and different merch items. Photographers and videographers were there to document the event. And of course, we had a wrestling event called Her Slam. And there was a huge outpouring of support from the Athens community, and they demanded more. So we actually had 2 more events that semester, and then the ephemera from the event was exhibited in the university galleries. And something that Annie had said about the gallery space becoming this space that you can imagine whatever you want. And so actually a lot of this project started with me just wanting to put a giant pink wrestling ring in the middle of a gallery. And what I thought would be a one-time event has actually now turned into a self-sustaining nonprofit organization that is still continuing. It was the first time I had organized an event of this scale, and it showed me the incredible power and potential of a group of people coming together under a shared cause to promote change in their community. And then more recently, last year at the Rocky Mountain Printmaking Alliance, which is called short form RUMPA. It's a printmaking conference that is held biannually. And last year it was in Spokane, Washington. And I saw a call online for people interested in putting on an event that incorporated wrestling and printmaking. And so obviously I knew that I needed to participate. And so we focused on opposing forces in printmaking. So thinking about things like analog versus digital, how they could be manifested as characters and, you know, like what their beef would be, who would be the baby face. My character was named Lady Analog, and she is a Luddite who like had traveled to the future, who absolutely abhors technology, and she wrestled with this poor robot that was actually a large balloon that is for children's birthday parties, that just had the cutest smile on its face, which like felt really weird punching this balloon with this cute little robot face. But we made all these outsized printmaking tools to use as gag weapons. We had risograph printed character development pages for people to come up with characters. And then there was also a belt and costume making table. And we honestly thought that printmakers might be a little too shy to actually perform. So we had all these skits planned. But in the end, we actually couldn't get them out of the ring. Yeah, it was a real blast, and everyone was just really into it. So we are going to be holding another event at the next REMPA, which will be in Reno, Nevada in the fall of 2025. So if you're interested, let me know. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kaleena. Luca, has Joni joined us, or I don't think so.
No, we've reached out and haven't heard anything, so I believe
Okay.
she's having some.
No, no worries. I'll just stop the share then, and then maybe if she joins us, I can bring it back up, and we can just proceed to the question period. I know during the pandemic, when I had students zooming in from China, there was always all sorts of glitches that were happening. So hopefully we can get her on. So I'll just kind of proceed to some of the questions, and feel free if you guys both want to answer a question or just one of you, either way is fine. But yeah, we'll just start with some of those. So first one I have is in Jennifer L. Roberts' recent book, Contact, Art and the Pull of Print, she says, every print is a result of a process of contact and release, which links to ideas of touch, presence, and intimacy, but also to themes of loss, separation, and memory. Thinking about how you each incorporate elements of connection and intimacy in your work, often with direct interactions with community, what role does print play in this work? Is it a souvenir or a document, or just a way of solidifying something that's more ephemeral?
I was thinking about, when I was like thinking about this question, just like all the merch that we made for the wrestling event. And that whenever I would be in town, or like even after I had moved away, people, you know, whenever I go back, if I see someone in an SEWW t-shirt, like I'm so pumped, and I just feel so like, I don't know, like that person is a part of my community. And so I was thinking about, yeah, the role of merch, and how like making something that is this, like, you know, you went to this event, you were like inspired and like felt a part of it so much that you wanted something that you will use or wear like later on. And just that, yeah, that feeling of being included in something like a secret society, because you participated in this event. And I think about it a lot in terms of like, because like the football is obviously big down here. And I have for 10 years have been here, but I still really don't understand the game. But I am always really excited when it's on, and that it's just an excuse for people to get together and kind of cheer on this one thing together. So I feel like, yeah, the merch item from an event is this, yeah, this kind of idea of that, like we shared this moment together, and like that you can just kind of secretly acknowledge it afterwards.
Totally. It's kind of like it can go on and have its own life beyond you too, where people will continue to talk about the project, and that
Yeah.
becomes its full own thing too.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Annie?
I love that. I love that idea of merch. I also love making merch. But I think to answer this question, I'll talk about like I guess my personal impetus for doing it. I don't know what other people are thinking when they come into my space and they have to print make. But I think that for me, it gives me like a sense of purpose. Or like I think I have this psychosis that I need to be useful, and I don't know, and I've thought about it a lot. It might become from like um immigrant brain, it might become from like women brain, I don't really know, but this impetus to be useful is really important to me in my practice, and I explore it in like fun ways. But for something that like screen printing, which is the main thing that I bring into community spaces, I think people have heard of it, and they you know, it's an everyday use. It's on your shirts, it's on like banners that you see walking around. So I think I want people to come and be able to recreate the things that they see on a day-to-day basis, and for me to have a sense of purpose for being there and they're like as a stranger in their space or in their community, um to prove that to personally prove that I should be there, but also to do some kind of connecting over the art practice, and so that we're doing something together.
Yeah, great. I love that laundromat project on so many different levels, because it just kind of like draws people in. It's kind of like all the different graphics you can play with, but then it's also so helpful to people that like need a place to do their laundry. And you're kind of like modeling like, oh, you could have a business like this too, and it would be popular. Look at this.
Especially in Dawson City, because I was there this summer, and there is something about the community that like they're so generous with you that you just want to help them. And like the housing crisis there is so pronounced. And you know, people are like sleeping on buses and showering at the campground. And I was like in this house as a resident artist, and I was like, you can come and shower here. Like, please, like come into this house that you've given me, because I want to give something back.
Totally. Well, tell me about the disco, Annie. You kind of mentioned it
Did
briefly,
I
but
zoom past that?
disco in the laundromat? Tell us
Honestly,
more.
I was just newly like approaching that that thing I talked about as the gallery as my new friend used to be enemy kind of space, where I was like, okay, what's if I could turn a space into literally anything, what would it be? And yes, I don't know if you all have been to a dance party that takes place in an art gallery space, but I became a connoisseur of them after doing this disco because it was so awkward, you guys. I love the story about how we did it. You know, everything was in place. We even had a bar in the back. Because the, you know, galleries are great. They even have liquor licenses. So we had everything we needed. But because the expectation of coming into art gallery isn't this unlocked potential of it being like whatever you want, um, people came in and were like, do I start dancing now? Like, should I look, is someone gonna host me? Like, should I look at the art? And so it was so funny. I didn't know how to host at that time for that kind of event either. So I was just like dancing at people, and I'm like, okay, this makes them even more uncomfortable. But yeah, it was a special night. I think that I like this idea, the project of laundry as an excuse to just like have free time, because you have to wait for your clothes to dry. We didn't have dryers either, so you had to wait for them on the line, or you had to wait for them to do this like slow spin cycles with the water coming out of hoses into a bucket in the space. So what are you going to do in the free time that you have? Why not like uh, unlock any barriers you have with engaging with your community and do these weird events that I had, you know, tried to plan.
I love that. It seems like both kind of like the wrestling project and the laundromat, it's kind of like this framework that you can then kind of like layer stuff on top of or like pull apart. Very cool. All right, I'll go to the next question. So at its root, printmaking is a democratic medium. Instead of making one precious item, you're making multiples. So thinking about ideas of generosity, community, and world building, how are multiples important to your work?
I can go first.
Okay.
We'll just go in that order. Yeah, so I think, yeah, mentioning before just like that the community aspect of printmaking is really why I was drawn to it. And that has, like, I just think become important in, I mean, with teaching and like with projects that I do with my students and then projects that I'm thinking about. I also really like the way that a print can take up a lot of space through the multiple, whether that is to, yeah, make a sculpture or an installation. Thinking of pattern and wallpaper, you can make something really small that then can be really big, especially, yeah, always talking with students about like, we're all sometimes restricted by the size of the press or like the size of the screen, but then through the multiple, you can make something big. Or use a steamroller. Um, and I also am really always in awe of the generosity of printmakers. I feel like since we do make multiples, the trade is always a big thing. The print exchange where you're making multiples to collect, work from other people. And also even like demonstrating techniques. Like Suzie, we were talking about like our YouTube channels with like yeah, techniques that are shared and going to conferences and things. Like I feel like printmakers, if you develop a new technique, you're not like patenting it or like wanting to charge people or really make money off of it. I just feel like printmakers are always like, I want to show you how to do this thing because I would love to see what you do with it. And also like because with prints we make, there is that thing with like with prints we can never really charge as much as like a painting, but I also kind of love that there's always this lower price point because you know people can collect your work and the prints won't necessarily collect in drawers. So I do think there is like a generosity to just printmaking in general that is like through in all through lines of printmaking.
Lena, I was just like, I'm listening to you. I'm like, I'm searching your answer for like why the multiple matters to me at all. I'm like, what is it? What is it? So I don't know. Maybe I'll pick up on the last thing you said. I think for me, when we talked about this in preparing for this, there's like, I feel like there's printmakers who will identify as printmakers and they know that. And then there's people like me who have done a lot of printmaking, but I do it in such a way that I'm not a printmaker's mind that I don't consider myself to be you know, like that. So when we talk about the multiple, I'm like, yeah, multiple, you have to make something more than once to get it right. I really love like the ritual as in our title of the motion. Um I think that like necessary movement of the body, and like you even get sore at printmaking after like or any kind of uh or screen printing after a while, that physicality of the repetitive motion is I love that part because it makes me think of labor. And I think that if the theme of what I'm talking about today is this like proof of usefulness, proof of belonging through what you can do for a community, I think that feeling of like doing labor for somebody else or teaching somebody else how to do a type of labor that they've been curious about is amazing to me. I also love the consumer quality, like the last kind of thing you touched on of the multiple. I think that if I've had an issue with the art gallery, it would make sense that I have an issue kind of with the esoteric quality of like a single artwork. And not to say that there aren't artists that work in this fashion. I love their work, but I love that the impetus of this question, the multiple as being democratic. I think there's a lack of preciousness, even though if we treat our papers and ink so preciously, which I also am guilty of, like that preciousness goes away if you create enough of them. So I really love that quality as well.
It also feels like when because you do events where like people are screen printing together. So like if you get the screen set up, you can print one, but then other people can print from the same screen as you. So it's not like setting something up every time. I feel like maybe that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess I'll say one more thing that printmaking, I was thinking about how to bring this into the conversation or like even include slides about it. But honestly, the most screen printing I've been doing lately is bringing designs that I don't create, I just culminate and burn onto screens to bring to art builds for like Free Palestine protests and things like that. And I don't think there's been a better example in the printmaking process for me where like there's a service that a lot of people actually want and need, and that I can provide and feel useful in a space where I just feel completely helpless to what's going on in the world. And it's like this also these designs again, which I can't take credit for. It's like a culmination. It's just me like collaging different designs that people send me together. There's a complete lack of ownership, a complete lack of preciousness. People are coming in with their own objects, grabbing a print, and then I see them out, like you're talking about, March, see them out at different events and stuff like that. I think that printmaking has never made more sense to me than at those kinds of events.
Yeah, well put. Well put. Maybe this other question, I'm going to skip down in my question list because it might link a little bit more to what you're talking about, Annie. So many print processes take a long time. With printmaking, you often take something that is immediate, like a mark or a scratched line, but then it must go through a series of steps before you see the final result. How do the rituals and process of print add to or influence your work?
The other day I was talking with my students and like making the admission that I actually like really hate drawing and like sketching and preparing the like image for the prints, and the only thing I want to be doing is actually like working on the print because that's the process that I enjoy the most. And I think it is like thinking of, sewing or quilting and these kind of like monotonous tasks and repetitive motions that I've done a million times that I mean, I still have to think about, but I can kind of turn my brain off. That become like, I always really liked those moments in the classroom or like, thinking of the quilting bee where you're doing something that you don't really have to think about. And that's like when this kind of wonderful exchange happens where the other person in the studio, you're just kind of like chatting and making this work together. So I do feel like the repetitive motions and like, really long processes are like these nice moments where like, yeah, you're feeling useful, you're feeling productive, but then you're also engaging with whoever happens to be around.
Love that. I I think I'll answer this question by talking about playfulness. That first show that I shared with the blanket for is that I didn't share. This name of the show is Playhouse. Again, like really playing with the idea that the gallery can be anything, especially if you invite young people in who are used to creating, stages out of a blanket or like a whole world out of a under the table situation. So I think that as an adult, I'm trying to weave playfulness into everything that I do, especially with the amount of very serious like content that feels necessary to bring up in the art. And I think that for me, that the rituals that I create in different practices are the ways, they're the entryways into which I feel like I can engage in different topics in a how do I say this, in a playful mindset, as opposed to getting trapped in all the like the deep thinking that takes place underneath the work. I think that the ritual lets you just get into the studio and start making something. I think I'm interested in stuff like laundry shoe because you have to do also so much cleaning in your art making practice, especially if you're a printmaker. I think those rituals of just like cleaning, like organizing your inks, like building little shelves to put my brayers on and my squeegees on, stuff like that. It gets you into the studio in like a more playful, like useful kind of this practical way, and which allows space then for the exploration of material to happen. Whereas I have a bad habit of just like getting lost in the serious thinking. And I think I try really hard to fight it. Otherwise, can't make anything.
I also kind of really, when you're talking about like being in the studio, I feel like because of the rituals, there is a lot of like superstition about like if you don't do something properly or like you skip a step and then, we have a candle in the print studio. We like pray to the print gods, especially when we're doing lithography. So I do love that, yeah, the aspect of ritual, and there being a little bit of like kind of spirituality like linked to that as well.
Nice. Also, kind of, I was thinking about this kind of like process and ritual related to teaching, because you guys both teach as well too. Thinking particularly about Annie's. You didn't show it today, but you had some like letterpress projects that you did kind of more with community and just like really getting into the minutia of process where like every word that you decide to print, you have to think about it backwards and kind of like each letter by letter and kind of how that kind of like process like adds to deeper meaning for things because you're really thinking about each element.
Yeah.
Cool. So what role does humor play in your work? Because you both engage quite a bit with humor as well.
Do you want to go first, Danny?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like I keep making you go first. You can
It
take
like
this one.
links to a lot of what you were talking about before.
Okay. So I didn't talk about this, but I think of myself as when I think of myself as an artist, I don't think of myself as a printmaker. I think of myself as a comic artist, which is hilarious to me because I have not published a comic since like 2018, 2017. I used to do a daily comic, but I find that starting off having such a close relationship with comics, graphic novels, which is this shelf behind me, covered in those, um, gives me a way to think about the rest of my projects through this comics mindset. So I think about the qualities of a comic, like they're super accessible, all ages. You can make them yourself. Like kids have no problem just publishing, like making a comic, asking their teacher or their parent how to use a print machine and sending them giving them to their friends. They're funny. They're accessible because you also develop a relationship with a character. It's a serial comic. You get to find out what they're doing like every week. And I love that like long-term building of a relationship with a character who you like, who's very likable because they're funny, and because they get put into interesting situations. And they also engage with everyday content a lot of the time, my favorite comics anyway. So yeah, with all that backing of like that form, which doesn't even apparently come into my work these days that much, I think that is the like philosophy I think that I've inadvertently and advertently kind of brought into all the different engagements that I have with people. So yeah, mainly that humor is like this really one-shot way to get somebody else involved with what you're doing and to show, your personality, your intelligence, your ability to adapt and connect with another person as quickly as possible.
I love that you started with comics because I'm teaching a comics class right now and I know nothing about comics, but like this class was really a way because I was like, I see people making comics and I feel like I like really want to try my hand at it. So I love that you've like started with it and I'm like just getting into it. But yeah, so the humor aspect is funny because I feel like lately with like having some discussions with friends where like if you're not making work that makes you laugh, then like what's the point? And so like sometimes when I'm making something like I mean it's not even particularly funny, but I just like find it like funny what I'm making sometimes. And a lot of it is because like there is like an absurd aspect to it. But I also feel like humor is a good way to kind of like disarm people to talk about more serious subjects. Um, and yeah, like a way to kind of bring people in. And then once they're paying attention, then you can talk about those like deeper aspects of the work. Which I found, yeah, with like the wrestling, especially being in the Deep South, like a lot of it was because I was like really upset about the election and that we didn't have a woman president. And I had this kind of like really like desire to make like a distinctly like feminist project, which, you know, being in the Deep South and after only having been there for a couple of years, I was like, I don't know like how it's going to be received. But it obviously had this like huge like outpouring of support. And I think it was because we did use humor to talk about these like tropes and like stereotypes of femininity, which like if you were just looking at it, you know, you could enjoy it as a spectacle. But then if you actually like considered it, you know, we were talking about like the performance of gender cliches and also like these kind of contemporary issues that were affecting women today. But you know, you didn't have to engage with those deeper topics. You could just actually enjoy it as like a funny show. So yeah, I do feel like humor is a way to like sometimes like survive as well, because yeah, things can be so heavy, but if you can talk about them with like a little bit of humor, we can get through.
Definitely. Feel free. I just wanted to open up the floor. If anyone wants to put any questions in the chat, feel free, and we can kind of add that into the conversation as well. Did you guys have any questions for each other?
Well, now I just want to know about the comics class.
Yeah.
What kind of, yeah, what kind of stuff are you teaching?
Well, I really started teaching the comics class because I have like a book arts class and I taught it last year. And, you know, we did all the like book arts, like structures. And then I found when it came to like, okay, make an artist book, because of where I am, there's not like, we're very isolated. Like the closest big city is Memphis. And, you know, I grew up going to like book arts fairs and like zine festivals, and there's nothing like that here. So I just feel like they don't know, like, there's no like artist books in the special collections library, things like that. So it was really hard for me to be like, okay, I want you to make fill this book with content and like, you know, make a structure that complements it. And so I wanted to teach the comics class as a way to like develop content and then make book structures. So yeah, it's really like one of my favorite classes right now because it's a small group. There's 6 of us, and I'm doing like a lot of like Linda Berry exercises. So we do like these daily diary exercises, and I really like, it feels very intimate and like we get to know about each other, because a lot of the like starting with something they know, I'm kind of learning about like their daily routines and like things that affect them. So we just finished, we did like one panel comics, 4 panel comics. They just did a 1-page comic with 9 frames, and now we're moving on to like zine structures. So
Very cool.
fun.
Very cool. I'll just say that Linda Berry absolutely saved my life. Like I use her stuff in my classrooms too, not teaching comics at all. Even in my academic courses, I use Linda Berry's stuff to get people into like discussion
There
mode.
it is.
Yes. Actually, I did speaking of comics, I think of myself as a comic artist because I was making those daily comics before I like re-entered this academic context for like 6 years or so. And then I was lost and I picked up Linda Berry's syllabus and like went step by like every page, memorized all the poems she had in there, like all this stuff just to focus for a minute in my wild life. And yeah, and then I was like, okay, I can apply to grad school now. Thanks,
Well, the
Linda.
comics feel kind of like a way to like, I don't ever want to like, I don't write like journals or like diaries, but it feels like a way to like reflect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in a way that's like you only have a handful of panels. I mean, depending on how you're doing it. So you have to like somehow consolidate a lot of reflection into like I was doing two panel comics at the time. So you have to set up the context and then, make some kind of closure in such a short period of time without making your life look trite. So or if I was doing daily personal comics, so challenging.
So great. I feel like often in Linda Berry's work, there's this kind of like you're being guided through things like with different exercises and stuff. And I see that a lot in a lot of your projects, Annie, that you have this kind of like teaching element to it. And then also, Kaleena, now hearing about your teaching as well. Do you think your teaching kind of like makes its way into your own practice?
Well, I think, yeah, with the comics class, it was like, having minimal time like during the academic year, but still needing to produce. I feel like I use my classes, you have to make something. So sometimes I'll like make a print in my classes. And I hated relief when I was in undergrad. It just like wasn't, I didn't like the line work. But now that I've started teaching, I always do the reductive relief project like every semester. And so I've started making this kind of like unintentional series of prints that are, so like every semester I make this one print that's usually around some sort of like myth or like archetype of like a woman. And like now it's become this series just because I do them every semester. And then also with the monoprints that I'm obsessed with doing now, that when I was younger, I was always like, monoprints are like whatever. I just like was not interested in them. And then when I taught the process, I was like, oh, stencil monoprints are very cool though. And now it's like what I do. So I feel like teaching has actually forced me to like kind of work through different printmaking mediums. And now like what I used to use like has completely changed. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that too. I'm really into monoprints at the moment as well. And I think there's something maybe kind of linking back to what you're talking about earlier about de-skilling a little bit. Annie, was that today or was that our other conversation? Anyway, where you kind of like with print, you kind of learn how to control it all, but then kind of once you kind of can generally control it, you're like, oh, actually, what's more interesting to me is like the spontaneity of something and just like what's unexpected in the process is kind of like what I'm interested in it with now. Yeah. I had one question that I didn't ask from before. So thinking about Annie's laundromat installation, Kaleena's prints of doormats and sculptural recreations of domestic items, and then also Joni's pick up and take out menus. A through line in all your work is the replica as a way to recreate something both familiar and surprising. Can you talk to your interest in the replica or the trompe-l'oeil, so like trick of the eye?
I'll go first because I also am still thinking about the classroom, so I will try to
Oh yes, sorry, I didn't give you a chance to answer.
I will foray
Feel free to
into
go
that
back.
idea in a minute. Actually, this is perfect. I think my answer can answer both questions. I think I showed that picture of my beautiful laundry, the window vinyl. I was like, I loved it so much. It was like I spent all this work making these prints that were on the walls. There's risograph and screen printing, all this work driving up the laundry machines. And then at the end of the day, I was like, I would have been happy just with the big windows because which replicated the closest, in my opinion, to what an actual laundromat has. Like my machines didn't look like a real laundromat. I painted a wainscoting that didn't look like a real laundromat. So that was like the thing that was the most real to me aesthetically. And I think it's the kind of that same answer about why I've chosen kind of screen printing as my main area is because it's something that people see. You see it all the time. And I think that there's like a backlog of aesthetic, like, street aesthetic or, daily use looks that we backlog is just normal. And I love the potential of just kind of like using something that everybody can recognize, that everybody knows, and just like doing something wacky with it or making people think a little bit more about the potential of that tiny thing that's happening. Yes, let's never mind. This has nothing to do with my answer for the classroom question, but I was just thinking about how for a long time I thought of my like pedagogical practice as synonymous with my art practice, because at the end of the day, what I'm most curious about in hosting these spaces, or transforming spaces into places where people can meet, is like the intricacies of being in a collaborative space and trying to deal with everybody's different expectations. So I think that when you in the classroom, I do so much stuff to make sure everyone's on the same page. Like we do community agreements, we do like grounding exercises, that we do check-ins every day at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. Like I'm trying to make these spaces where everyone feels like we are all doing work together, in a way where everyone feels like part of it. And I think that the aesthetic choices I'm making in this art gallery space, where people already kind of feel uncomfortable a lot of the time, are to make people feel like, okay, this is a space I can recognize. Maybe maybe it makes me a little bit more comfortable being in this space. But all the tools of, I guess, the replica are what I'm trying to tap into there. I can't say I've been all the way successful, but I'm working on it.
The
Yeah, I was
windows
gonna
are
say
amazing.
about the de-skilling, like you were talking about the screen printing process breaking down, but like appreciating what happens. And I feel like when I was at St. Michael's print shop, Margaret was doing these like Band-Aid box collagraphs that I am now obsessed with. And I'm like, I can make a copper plate etching, but I love this box that's printed, and especially like copper is insanely expensive. And yeah, I just think it's really funny that I'm like, yeah, I know how to do all these like really complicated processes, but I am just like stunned and amazed by the beauty of this like piece of trash that is printed. So yeah, there's like an interesting things that happens, like I guess the longer that you print. And then thinking about the replica, I did become kind of obsessed with like, yeah, replicating objects. Like I did a bunch of chair pieces that look like that rocking chair. And like literally thinking about the replica and like the authenticity of the artifact, especially in museum display, and thinking about, because I was thinking a lot about like the history, going to all these history museums, and how, history as presented in books and museums is like, it's a story that's being presented that can be manipulated depending on where you are. And oftentimes it's accompanied by these objects that, have an aura because they existed during the time. And so like it becomes this like vehicle for belief because, we see the objects and we see the story, and then but that how, we're constantly rewriting history, people have been not included in history, and that objects are like often telling the story. So yeah, I was comparing like the consumer made like piece of furniture that loosely resembles something from the past versus like these random objects that I had found like that were actually from antique stores, and considering like the differences between them, and like, is there an aura to them, which then I felt like was interesting talking about printmaking, because we talk about like the aura of the original, and like, does that get lost if it's replicated, and all the arguments included in that. But yeah, the replica is like such an interesting topic, I feel like.
I liked when you were talking about that piece with the chairs, the more sculptural piece, about how it was like a sculpture, but you were talking about it kind of from a print perspective too, where you were talking about mirroring and flatness versus 3D and all this kind of stuff too. And in that book that I referenced in one of my questions, at Contact, by Jennifer L. Roberts, she also talks about screen printing, of the process of flipping it around, because you have to get used to things being backwards, that it's kind of like looking at something through a window, because you're outside of it, but you're kind of like looking onto it. I feel like I'm not doing the best job of saying what she meant, but just kind of how these processes kind of like take us out of it so that we can be kind of like separate, but then also reflected at the same time.
Yeah, I do feel like I like going from a drawing, like none of my drawings ever felt complete, but then when they go through the print process, yeah, that like separation from me, I just like them so much better when there's like less of, I mean, there's still my hand in it, but it's like through that mechanical process. And that, yeah, that distance between like the immediacy of the drawing and like this long process.
right. Anyone else have any questions you want to ask each other? No Joni, sadly, no Joni.
Where's Joni? That's the question.
I guess it would be like almost midnight where she is right now. So
Yeah.
maybe she's sleeping.
Well, I'll encourage all of the viewers today to look up her work. She has a really good website that kind of like goes through all of her different projects, and it kind of relates a lot to the topics that we were talking about today. So definitely check that out, kind of when you're thinking about all these ideas that we brought up. Yeah, oh, is there a question in the question? Oh yeah, here we go. What are some opportunities you find that are special to print installation? That's from Brenda Reed.
Opportunities?
Oh yeah, what are some opportunities you find that are special to print installation? Yeah,
I can try to answer this question, I guess. Yes, I can try to answer this question. I think when I just this image came to mind when the question was asked about what I was doing before to prep for the laundry installation. Whenever I would go into like restaurants I thought that were good, well designed, libraries, community centers, I was constantly looking for any kind of design work that would translate well into print. So I was looking for like weird fonts, um, banners. Like I don't know if I talk about like children's sports ads that are on like a chain link fences outside of schools. Um, signs in different languages for like different kinds of restaurants. I was constantly on the lookout for how Printstallation existed already in the places I would frequent, and so that I could like put together this look for how I would want a dream space of mine to be rendered. So I guess that opportunity to see like art installation in your everyday life, I think is totally connected to the possibilities of this idea of Printstallation.
Yeah, when I think about Printstallation, I guess I was making like thinking of flat surfaces that could be like adapted, like a quilt. I made this one that was like handkerchiefs that I pressure printed through a Vandercook and then like cut out and like pinned on a wall. Flags, I really got into flags at a certain point because that's like, yeah, just a perfect flat thing that then becomes three-dimensional. And then yeah, with my students, because I teach an intermediate class every semester, just encouraging them to think, now you know how to make a print, but like prints can be so much more than just a flat page on a wall. So I usually kind of switch between a wallpaper project where they create a repeat pattern, and then yeah, a Printstallation where they have to like print something small a lot and like think about, yeah, what happens when this small thing becomes a part of this like larger mass, and like trying to make it immersive, so that you're like actually surrounded rather than like looking at a flat thing that you enter into.
Yeah, I guess I have one more thought that came to mind because you said that word immersion. I feel like in a lot of my classes I'm always bringing up the work of B&D Press in Montreal, Jenny Lim and Elise Louisa Aquino. Sorry if I say those names wrong and you're listening in, but yeah, they did. They're like a collab of two people that they make a lot of zines, and then they just like invented their own press. I think they sometimes teach at Concordia, and so they publish everything instead of under their own name through the name of the press a lot of the time. And they were doing some work where they would make zines with each other and then like figure out how to explode those zines onto walls so that like multiple people could enter the book at the same time, which I thought was so romantic and interesting. Like I think that I love speaking of book arts, I love this is my favorite genre. Like my favorite genre of art is the graphic novel. And it's such an intimate experience, and like the only way that we know how to share that is like book clubs. Two people read the book, which is probably the best form for doing that. But the idea of being able to enter a book with a friend it was just like amazing to me, so romantic.
That's awesome. All right. I think there's no more questions in the chat. I just want to thank both of you for like really great talks. I feel really inspired and full of ideas. And yeah, Luca, do you have anything you want to add?
I just wanted to say that this was great. I think I speak for the folks here, that it was wonderful to listen to all that everybody has been up to, and how your practices overlap. Yeah. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Yeah, and
Thank
everyone
you.
have a nice long weekend now. I guess
All
not
right.
you, Kaleena, in the
Not
States.
me.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thanksgiving's
Have a
later.
regular weekend.
Thank you.
True.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.
You
All
too.
right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.